Hi. Well, I want to go through the book First Break All the Rules. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you give some thought about it. I look forward to hearing your comments because they may be very different than mine. You may have taken away totally different things and not necessarily agreed with things I took away. I don't want to share what I did take away. Right. Hope you really enjoyed the book. A lot of that people do. Again, it was done by a couple of the senior executives at Gallup. That's very common that consultants at a company write a book on behalf of consultants. It helps them, in their marketing. And frankly, this book has led to millions and millions and millions of dollars in consulting for the Gallup company. The big picture, to me at least, I took away, there's a lot of things in the book, but the biggest thing I took away is what a diagnostic tool it is. I remember when I first heard about this book, I'm saying, there's no way. There's no way. You're telling me that you can run a regression model with a high R squared, an 80 plus R squared, and you found a formula that can predict four things: increased effectiveness of the organization and people, bigger profits, better employee commitment engagement, and customer loyalty. And you can do that with a formula. I remember thinking at the time, there's no way. I mean, that's the holy grail. There's no way. And I got this book, I'm going, oh my gosh, these are some of the top statisticians in the world. And they've got an algorithm. And it changed my life some, because I looked and I said, okay, I can question lots of things in business and a lot of it's best guess. And there's lots of different models and a lot of different interesting things. But I'm going to take this one a little bit more seriously. Because if they've got 12 questions that predict those four things, I'm going to spend a little bit more time with the team that I'm assigned to thinking about those 12 questions. And it changed. I mean, I would go home at night. I would take, one employee at a time in my mind driving home. It was my driving home behavior. And I'd say, okay, how do I think they'd answer these 12 questions? Because you can't ask them every day and you can't ask them every week. You can bring it up in conversations a few times a year. But I'd think about it, and it got me to focus on these things, and it got me to think about these things. It got me to change some of the things, both in onboarding people and mentoring and motivating and dealing with people. And frankly, when people left, looking at these things and say, where did we miss? Were there any of these 12? And when you step back, what are the 12 really saying? Well, sort of makes sense. You have what I need, right? Do I enjoy being there? And do I not only enjoy being there, but I feel like I belong. My life has a little bit more special purpose, and I can grow, I can develop. There's more opportunity if I want more opportunity. And those make sense. And, as the book says, people tend to fire their boss, and their boss is primarily responsible for these things, not just the company, but the boss is. But here's a question I have for you. The book was written as if you're a senior executive or a manager or a supervisor, but it's written from the standpoint of how do you deal with employees? I have a reverse question for you. How can you use it for your own career management? How can I use it from your own career management and managing your career? My guess is over your career, you're not going to have all great bosses. You're going to have some great, some good, maybe some not so good. One thing you might consider in how you can use this list is help your boss be a better boss. If they're not thinking about these kind of things, what if you brought them up in certain proactive conversations? It's just conversation, as some questions, whatever, and help them be better at these different dynamics, not only in how they affect you, but how they affect others. And that's one way. Here's another, maybe more important way. If you think of the whole hiring process, it's like rapid dating. I mean, it's like the television shows where you go from a couple to married in 3 weeks or 2 weeks. And that's sort of how the whole job thing works. What if you use this list as a big part of your criteria in a few different ways? One, different industries are better at these different things, sort of like a pest analogy. How how does that industry, where are they better at and where are they not as good at on these 12 types of things? And how does that fit you? And they're different. What's important in one industry or culture is different than others. So one is at the industry level. Two is you can use it in the interview process. Ask yourself these questions as you're going through the interview. How do I think I would see these things? And if you've got criteria, which most of us walk into this whole interview process without a lot, if you've got good criteria, and these might be really good criteria for you, maybe you're more likely to make the right decision for you, better decision for you on the industry you choose, the company you choose, and even the department within that company that you lean towards. It might help you in those different ways. Let's take some other things that were in this book. I just want to, folks, make sure you picked up on. One, they talked a lot about leaders versus managers. And I don't know if you read it the same way. I sort of read it is, in the book, you're always either a leader or a manager. I'm not sure I agree with that. I'll talk about that later, but it's an opinion. It might be right. It's not my personal experience. But in general, I look at, you've got a role when you're a leader and you've got a role when you're a manager, and they're sort of different roles. In the leader role, the focus, they call it outward. And that's like, when remember talked about customers and vendors. And the customer, we said, is someone who depends on someone, and vendor is someone who provides it. Remember, that can be internal, external. We said the best vendors try to understand, well, what is my customer trying to do? What decisions are they trying to make? What experience are they trying to avoid or gain? Because it's all about the action. And what are they trying to understand? The insight, cause and effect. And that's more the outward focus. What are they looking for? Who's dependent on me? Managers tend to look more inward. Are we doing things right? Is there a better way for us to do it? In terms of talent, talks about leaders look for, criteria in selecting. They look for talent. Managers look for experience. I remember reading that and saying, yeah, that sounds great. Have I always done that in my career? And I thought about it. And I said, I can remember a time where I had two potential product managers. One had 7 years experience and one had 3 years experience. And the one that had 7 was really good. And the one that had 3, I remember thinking, this person I think has the potential to be outstanding. And then I remember thinking it through, and the why theory fits this. I'm going, I hire the person with 7 and they don't work out. Well, we all interviewed them. Other people involved, didn't work out. If I go for the person with 3 and they don't work out, I'm going to look like an idiot. They're going to be saying, look, Dave had the opportunity to hire someone with 7 years experience. No wonder they didn't work out. This one only had 3. So there is high risk in hiring for talent. The expectations of people, leaders focus more on with their team at that time when they're developing people. Here's the outcome I'm looking for. And they may discuss process, and they may, answer questions and stuff, and they may guide people through the questions they do, but they let others own more how to get to the outcome. Doesn't mean they don't guide them, doesn't mean they don't educate them, but they don't demand it. They don't require exactly how to do something. When you require exactly how to do something, you own it. Managers tend to focus on, because where they came from, they got promoted from the job. I know the best way to do it. That's why I got promoted. And here's how I want it done right. Because if it's not done right, it's going to reflect badly on me. Tends to be how managers look at things. In terms of motivation, this is a big one. Leaders tend to focus on, you can't fix people. So focus on, how can I take advantage of the strengths they already have? And managers, because it's so easy to identify where someone might have some weaknesses. They focus on more likely trying to fix people. Now, it doesn't mean you don't focus on people's weaknesses at all, but treat it as the Achilles heel. Key thing here is, don't put most of the emphasis on fixing, but most of the emphasis on taking advantage of what they're already great at. And fit, that cultural fit that fits the behavior, the way we operate, the value system, what's important, how we treat people, how we focus, how we make decisions. Do they fit? And leaders tend to focus more on that. Managers tend to focus on, can they learn what I need them to do? And are they promotable? Peter Drucker, one of my favorite business philosophers, I used to love this comment: leaders do the right thing and managers do things right. And I remember personal experience I had. I think I told you I worked for a while for Jeff Nugent, Ted's brother. And I remember my direct boss, his name was Joe DeLapp. And Joe and I, frankly, we hated each other. We hated each other. And we're at this big national meeting for 5 days. I still remember it was in Innsbruck, just outside of Tampa, near Tarpon Springs. 5-day meeting. Back then, we used to have these big meetings. This huge meeting. It's the 5th day. It's Friday morning. We're all set to go home. And Jeff Nugent calls Joe DeLapp and I into a room and says, guys, I'm still the boss. And I know you hate each other, but I'm still the boss. By the way, you're not going home today. We're looking at each other. What? You're not going home today. What's going on? Well, right now, your wives are sitting next to each other on a plane flying down from New Jersey to Orlando. Here's your rental car, and you're going to go pick them up in Orlando. Then you're going to go to Disney World. You're going to spend all the rest of Friday at Disney World. You're going to have dinner together and go to things. You're going to do the same thing Saturday. You're going to do the same thing Sunday, Monday morning, and then you fly home. Remember, Joe and I looked at each other and said, this is a nightmare. We did it. And the wives, I mean, they thought this was hysterical, flying down to Orlando. They're sharing stories. You know what Dave said about Joe? You know what Joe said about Dave? I mean, they thought this was hysterical. Key to the story is by Monday, we became really good friends because we understood each other. And frankly, part of the problem is we were too much alike. And to share where this went, so there's 2 parts of the story. First part of the story is ask yourself, do you think it was within Johnson & Johnson's appropriate processes for Jeff to pay for 2 executives and their wives for 3 days at Disney World? No, that wasn't the right thing. He didn't do it right. But it was the right thing for the business. And Joe and I ended up doing a ton of great things together for Johnson & Johnson. In fact, big effect on each other's lives. One in my life, I remember it's now years later. My son was only 1 year old when this happened. I remember it's now time for him to look at the graduate schools. I remember Joe DeLapp's the only one I know who went to the Kelley School of Business at University of Indiana. And sure enough, that's where my son went. That's where he met his wife. Worked out great. 5 years later, I'm teaching at the Kelley School of Business. And someone who hadn't even been born when this happened, it's Joe DeLapp's son, and he's in my MBA program. And Joe and I, to this day, are good friends. The thing is, it doesn't mean you always go outside the policies and procedures, but what leaders sometimes do is go outside the policies and procedures. Another thing I want to share with you is a mistake very easy to make. Most of us, it's very easy to summarize that we think the problem is someone's thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. Easy. I think their thoughts are wrong. That's what caused it. I think their feelings are wrong. That's what caused it. I think their beliefs are wrong. That's what caused it. And those hypotheses might be accurate. But the problem is every time I tried to work with someone I knew, well-meaning, their thoughts, feelings, beliefs, I almost always failed. But when I focused on the behavior, which as a leader I had a right to ask about, is amazing. As people got comfortable with a new behavior they were asked to do, and follow that behavior, their thoughts, feelings, and beliefs tended to follow. Key lesson: focus on the behavior, and the thoughts, feelings, and beliefs are likely to follow. Talk about changing thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, people are more likely to get defensive. All right. Another thing in the book, insight from world-class leaders. One is, again, we talked about how to select talent, and we talked about that. But the philosophy behind it is you can't teach talent, but you can teach facts. And talent drives results, and people don't change much. So the key thing is, think about it. Sometimes it's easier to teach someone your business than it is to teach them when they haven't come from your business, than it is to teach the talent for your business. Easier to teach facts about how to do your business than the talent to do it well. Types of people, you want people that are striving, they're constantly focused on the why. They're always thinking, focused on how, and they're always relating to other people. Who? The myth, they say, is that talent is rare. Talent is everywhere. And the myth that talent isn't needed in some positions is not the attitude leaders take. They say, I want the best people that I can afford for the position I'm looking for. You know, an example would be NFL football. You know, Belichick, one of the things that sets him apart, he spends a lot of time looking at people who are second string and third string and kickoff return teams and whatever. People who are less important to the team overall, but he wants the very best in those positions. He wants talent everywhere. And how do you find people? You gotta have criteria so you can judge what things you're looking for, have criteria against what you're doing. And that criteria might be against, well, what do the best employees do? And again, lesson learned, focused on the outcomes, not everything. Focus on the gold. Push the vampires aside. They get in the way. They suck the blood out of what you want people to really understand and focus on. Focus on what's critically important. 2, delegate people. Let them find their own route, because when they find their own route, through your guidance, through your questions, through your education, but they own it. 3, trust. Absolutely critical, both at the team level and individual level. And as we talked about that, the key recipe is care and respect. There are rules. It means you demand accuracy and demand safety, and you have standards. But the expectations is a focus on the customers that depend on us. Are we accurate for them? Are we available for them? We have a relationship and partnership with them. Do they come for us advice, and do we go to them for advice? And even more thoughts. Now, one of the things the book talks about is spend your time with the best people. Now, personally, that's not what I tended to do. The book might be right. I had a slightly different philosophy on that. My philosophy was, look, my job was, first of all, figure out the bottom 10% who I want to help them leave in a healthy way, either within the company or outside. 2 is figure out the top 20%. No matter what I do, most of them are going to do really well anyway. They'll find a way to do well. So I've spent most of my time with the 25th percentile through the 75th percentile. My attitude was, if I could help the average be better than average, then I've added value. So not necessarily right or wrong. It's one thing I did slightly different in the book. And then what's fit? You know, want to be careful of a specific career path that doesn't always work. You want to be careful of the PETA principle. That means hiring someone and promoting them above their level. Happens a lot in sales. You get this great salesperson, and in the culture, well, you only move up if you're sales manager. And frankly, sales management and being a great salesperson are totally different things. I've seen so many times someone having an outstanding career in sales, they moved into sales management, and they're not very good at it. 3 is have a hero at every role. Celebrate at every role what people have done. Help them feel great no matter where they are. And avoid salary caps. Salary caps can be dangerous. You might know the story of Ross Perot. Ross Perot started a few multi-billion-dollar companies and also on the board of IBM. He started as a salesperson for IBM. At a very young age, he was one of the 5 highest paid salespeople, actually employees at IBM. And in the 10K, as we talked about, in the 10K, you've got to publish the top 5. Well, they came to him and said, we have to change your commission schedule. He said, why? He said, because you're in the top 5, we have to publish. It doesn't look good that you're making more than most of our most senior executives. And he said, are you going to change the commission program for the other salespeople? And they said, no. And this is a guy who thought he was going to spend the rest of his days at IBM. He quit and started Perot Systems. Awesome. Be careful of salary caps. Employees, make every position a star. Help them be responsible, but help them develop. Leaders' role is insight on what's most important. Hold up that mirror and create safety net for people. Hold up that mirror and make sure what's important. You're going to terminate people, do it with tough love. Quick, direct, early. When you know it's not working, don't procrastinate. It's not going to work a year later. And focus on the talents, right? hiring, use open-ended questions, do a lot of listening, believe what they tell you. And reviews, do them often, make them simple, and focus on the future on how to get better as opposed to in the past what they did wrong. One of the things I loved about this book is, I had been in some world-class companies like a Johnson and Johnson. And, we had some very good training on various aspects of people management. But I looked at this list. They were great interview questions. They were as good or better than any I'd seen before. So I refer back to this book often and use these interview questions for finding talent and fit. Same thing with performance reviews. I had a lot of training at different companies on how to do performance reviews. I thought the guidance in the book were awesome and great questions. You might want to consider using those as a resource. And same on career planning. Been through a lot of training on how to do it. I thought the ones in the book were outstanding and used them. So quick takeaway of all this. We got a choice. Are we managing or leading? My personal belief is sometimes you're in a management role and sometimes you're in a leadership role. And the higher you go, I think you have more responsibility to try to be in the leadership role. But I'd be lying to say I thought I was a pretty good leader, but it doesn't mean I was always leading. So what does that mean? What is a role? Well, as a leader, I'm focused on change. Sometimes I needed stability. As a decision maker, as a leader, I'm facilitating decisions. But sometimes we need to get things done now. Sometimes in the actions I took, they were proactive, but there were times where things happened I didn't expect. I was reactive. A lot of times I encouraged organizations, people to take risks. Sometimes we didn't have that luxury of risks. A lot of times I broke the rules. Sometimes you had to make the rules. In terms of values, right? How hard someone works is great, but the results are what really count. And we talked about a little bit ago, the example with Jeff Nugent, is, the brother. Leaders focus more on what's the right thing. And 95% of the time, the right thing and doing it right are the same. Every once in a while is different. Leaders focus more on the why. Their attitude is they're never quite satisfied. Leaders always give credit, and they use questions to lead. Because when you lead through a question, you can do anything. You can educate, you can challenge, you can direct, you can do anything through the question and the tone of voice you use. When you lead through questions, they still own it. And the analysis, leaders think through all the complexity. They still communicate the simplicity. They add value by making the complex simple. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you got something out of it. And I appreciate the time. And I look forward to your feedback and your thoughts on how you saw some of this in a similar way or a totally different way. Awesome.